Okay, perfect. Hey, okay. So could you start off by introducing yourself, if that's okay?
Yes, of course. Hello, my name is Rachel Humphreys, and I am the owner of Mental Health Mastery Academy. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm an author, a fitness trainer, and mental health coach and advocate. So I'm just very passionate about helping to inspire others towards making positive changes in their life and feeling empowered, regardless of whether they live with diagnosable mental illness or whatever other mental health conditions they may be experiencing.
Brilliant. Is this something you don't do actually? So, um, I can't even begin to tell you how astounded I was when I came across your account because going medication free, given the things you've battled, is not something I've come across before. Um, Obviously, we'll go into that, but are you comfortable with sharing your story as to like how you became a coach or um, how this started for you, if that's okay?
Yes, of course.
Um,
I'm always generally a pretty open book. I love to share my story, and it is why I do what I do. I really, truly hope to be an example of
mhm,
not necessarily what everyone should do, but
mhm,
of what's possible
mhm.
for some
Brilliant.
people.
Mhm,
So I suppose, there's everyone has their own origin stories, so to say. I
mhm,
do have my long history with mental illness, but for the sake of the purpose of sharing this, how I kind of came about to be a coach, I'll summarize to say that I I actually wanted to go into the career field of marriage and family therapy
okay.
and had prepared for that in graduate school just because of my own personal journey and I love helping people. However, when I did not get accepted into the graduate program that I had hoped to get into. And so I was a single mother at the time and in really a situation where I needed income
Mm-hmm.
and I needed to be able to provide for me and my daughter quickly, I went ahead and deviated from my preferred career path choice.
Ah,
And it ended up being one of those blessings in disguise because now in hindsight, I don't know that I would want to be a marriage family therapist. I love what
ah,
I do. I love working in the capacity of a coach and doing helping people in a more rounded way of mind, kind of mind, body, and spirit, addressing both the physical fitness and the lifestyle, the mental health. So, with that being said, I got routed into a totally different career path. And I
mhm,
found myself climbing the corporate ladder, doing what most Americans do, which is chase the dollar, and you exchange time for money in that process. And
mhm.
so I just found myself in a good position, making a good income, and I was so unhappy. I was
Oh
a
no.
star patient within the psychiatric care system, right? Like I took all my medications, I went to all my appointments, I was stable by any doctor standards, but I was not happy. And I was severely abusing alcohol and other things to just kind of get through day to
Mhm,
day, deal with the anxiety. And I knew so many other working professionals in the exact same situation. There were so many of my peers that were so burnt out and stressed out, and not necessarily with diagnosable mental illness, but just dealing with life. And they were heavily abusing substances. And so I'm looking at this entire situation, I'm thinking, this isn't health. Like this isn't life. This isn't vitality. There's got to be more than this. And so that's when I began seeking finding my way back to my true path, which was in looking at mental health, being an advocate for that, helping others, coaching others. And so, in order for me to do that, I had to go on my own journey first. So that's
uh-huh,
when I kind of went about the process of becoming mind and mood altering substance free, psychiatric medication free. I began doing my side hustles to pursue additional educations and trainings to be able to then leave that corporate life and that prior career behind and fully step into, what I now do today. And so that's kind of how it came about. But I do want to share one other thing in regards to that. And it was that I took a trip. I took a
Okay.
trip to Boston and to see my sister, and it's a weekend I'll never forget. This was back in 2017, I believe. It was before I started my business.
Okay.
And so I had been I was on the airplane, Uber rides, one person after another said, "Are you a therapist? Are you a coach? What is it you do?" Because they're just like divulging their entire life story to me.
Right.
And I said, "No, I'm not." And after I had three people in one weekend, complete strangers, ask me that question, it was that little kind of knock from above that told me, okay, it's time for a change. And so after that weekend is when I really began to pursue the exit from my current career path and go into my new path.
Brilliant. Life works in such funny ways. And thank God for that trip. Thank God for that trip, or you wouldn't be here. And I'm still utterly astounded because obviously being stable doesn't mean being happy, right? And I'm curious as to how, you took that leap of faith of going medication free because it comes with its own risk, and how you found your own way to navigate mental illness without medication. And in all honesty, I would love your opinion on medication in itself, because I personally feel like unless it's really, really necessary, people shouldn't um pertain to medication for the pure reason that, I mean, there are a lot of reasons as to why, but I would love your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you. That's a great question and something I love to talk about.
Hmm.
So, for I guess to start with looking at my own personal journey and
Hmm.
why I chose to become medication free, it was that at the time prior to my beginning my medication reduction journey, I was on a cocktail of medications, as most people are with the types of
Hmm.
illnesses that I have.
Hmm.
So I was on an antipsychotic, I was on a mood stabilizer and an anti-seizure medication, and these are very serious, very severe medications that come with a host of side effects.
Right.
And the side effects themselves, it takes commitment to stay on your medication, which is why doctors struggle so much with non-compliance amongst their patients, is that these medications do not feel good to take. It feels good to no longer be completely destabilized, but the medications themselves don't make you feel good. So
Hmm.
I did not like the medication side effects. I did not like the long-term potential risks that came with those
Hmm.
medications.
Okay.
So longevity and being able to be healthy and have vitality as long as possible is something that's really important to me. So I didn't want to end up on dialysis. I didn't want to have a shortened lifespan because of medications that I was putting into my body. And not like I did not like the idea that I was taking all these medications and I was,
Hmm.
by psychiatric care system, considered a perfect patient. I did not like that I
Oh
still
no,
felt the need
that's not
to drink alcohol or smoke marijuana and do these things
right.
to try to cope with the anxiety. And so I thought, this isn't true wellness to me. There's got to be something more.
Right.
Now, and also, I should say, I also really wanted to have a child with my husband. I already had one child
Hmm.
from a previous relationship, but
Hmm.
I had married my husband. I really wanted to start a family with him, and taking medication while pregnant was just simply not going to be an option for me. I know that some people do that, but I
Hmm.
did not want to do that. And I
Hmm.
also didn't want to go from being completely dependent upon medication to just abruptly stopping it for the sake of
Right.
pregnancy and then
Right.
find myself in a crisis, right?
Right.
So these were kind of all of my reasons for wanting to pursue a medication-free path.
Hmm.
With that being said, I didn't know at the time if it was possible.
Right. Okay.
And I was okay with the idea that it might not be.
Okay.
But also just kind of the nature of who I am, I I'm always going to try. I might fail, and that's okay. But I always want to try because I don't want to have not succeeded or achieved something just for the sake of that I never tried.
Mm-hmm.
So my thoughts were, okay, if I go all out, if I give this everything I have and I can't be stable enough medication free, then at least then I'll know I've done it. I've done everything I possibly could to be medication free. I've done
Mm-hmm.
all the lifestyle, all the diet, all the fitness, everything I could do. And if it's not possible, it's not possible. And then I wasn't opposed to medication because I'm not anti-medication. And I want to make that very clear. I think that some people are put off by my message
Right.
because they think, well, my medications are great. I need my medications. Or some
Mm-hmm.
doctors and practitioners might say that's ludicrous. Not everyone can be off of medication and
Right.
that's a dangerous message. But this is not my message at all. Anyone who truly listens to the things that I say or they've read my book, then they'll know medication is absolutely critical during certain times and for some people.
Of course. Yeah.
I am not a proponent for a medication-free life for everyone
Mm-hmm. Of course.
because just because I'm medication-free does not mean I'm cured of my severe mental illness. And it requires a lot of diligent effort to
I can
maintain
imagine.
the life that I have,
Mm-hmm.
and that's worth it to me. But for some people, that might not be a possible reality or something that they're willing to make a reality, in which case I will always opt for stability for someone and quality of life and healthy relationships and the ability to provide for themselves. I will always vote for that before I vote for medication free.
Right.
So, that's something important that I want to clarify that that's also something that I teach in my book is how to determine if a medication free life might be right for you and what kinds of conversations to have with your doctor and what kinds of things to do on your own to see is this something that could be right for you. And my medication reduction and elimination journey took about a year and a half.
Okay.
My psychiatrist was willing to do that process much quicker because physically, you can safely reduce medication in a lot less time,
Mm-hmm.
even with as much medication as I was on.
Right.
But that's not what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to just get off of my medication. I was trying to transform my life. I was trying to be able to confidently be medication free and be healthy, happy, and stable. Because it's so important to me to be a good mother, to be a good wife, to be able to help contribute financially to my family, to do the things that I love. I don't want to be unwell.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I couldn't just stop taking my medication and poof, I'm all better. No, I knew it was going to be a process and that I would have to feel very confident about the lifestyle changes that I had made and the other natural treatments that I put in place
Mm-hmm.
before I ever took that final and last pill. And then when I did take my last pill, I did so knowing at any point in time in the future, if I'm ever too unwell to
Mm-hmm.
continue this journey, I will, no questions asked, go back on medication. And
Absolutely.
so that's really been my thought process and mentality since.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, I have not had to go back on any serious medications. And that's something I can talk more about in my process with that. And it's something I also teach in my book with how to have these checks and balances in place. But this is this is my life now, and I'm so grateful for it. And again, I don't think that it is right for everyone, but I think it's right for a lot more people than what's realized and what is, I'll say, like recommended or put out
Recommended.
there.
Understood.
It's something I really want to advocate for, show patients.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, look, I'm like you. You could possibly be like me. These are options for a possible reality for you. And then I also want to show practitioners, hey, look, this is possible. I'm walking living proof of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that to hopefully open their eyes as to being willing to pursue other more natural paths with their patients
Mm-hmm.
and maybe not being so scared to do that with the right patients. And my doctor, he's not like a naturopath or anything. He's a standard across the board psychiatrist, but we
Okay.
had been working together a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I wanted to go medication free, I didn't know if he would be open to that.
Of
Even
course.
though
Yeah.
we had great rapport, great
Uh-huh.
working relationship,
Uh-huh.
when I breached the subject with him for the first time, I was shocked at his response, and I was so grateful for it because that's what opened the doors to our journey together to helping me become medication free. And
Mm-hmm.
I still work with that doctor today.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, so I have so many questions. If you mind, yeah. So, um, obviously, in the medication gave some form of stability that was reassuring, and now that you don't have that, you've had to do a lot of things that balance that out. So, could you discuss what lifestyle changes you could recommend for people that are maybe trying, and also what? Okay, let's imagine that I also have mental illness and um like you discuss in your book, um, can I try it? Should I try it? How do I know if I should try it?
Yes, those are great questions
Right.
because it's something that's why I really try to emphasize that in my message when I'm talking about medication free or medication reduction or elimination
Mm-hmm.
is it's so important that it's the right time for
Mm-hmm.
that person that because there's multiple factors that go into is a medication free life even possible for someone, right?
Right. Right.
And I am fully aware that I have been blessed with certain circumstances that helped make that a reality. And it's something I'm immensely grateful for. One being an amazing support team. And that
Mm-hmm.
is something that I also had to build over time. But when someone is curious about reducing medications or becoming completely medication free,
Mm-hmm.
they need to be willing. I think the first most important thing is that they need to be willing to be one, introspective
Okay.
and honest with themselves. They need to be aware of where they're at and what they're willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of bringing it to using an example of as a fitness trainer, fitness coach, a lot of people maybe want to lose weight, they want
Mm-hmm.
to build muscle, get a better physique, but
Right.
they're not actually ready to execute the discipline and lifestyle changes needed to
Mm-hmm.
make that physique a reality. And
Mm-hmm.
so I see patients all or clients all the time that say, "Oh yeah, I want to work out. I'm ready to go. I want to make all this change." And then 2 weeks into their program, they've already walked out the door, or it's uh, they never start. So it's kind of all talk,
Ah.
no action.
Mm.
And it's I think when for those of us that work in the coaching industry, whether it's fitness or otherwise, you begin to kind of see when someone is serious about making change, when they are
Right.
truly ready to
Mm-hmm.
transform.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain mindset shifts that need to have occurred,
Mm-hmm.
and that desire to um, when you are like trying to move away from the pain of where you're at
Right.
and the idea of what could be, it's more appealing than going through the pain it's going to take to get there. This is a process that someone has to be willing to accept. So when someone asks me, well, could I become medication free? There are some key things. They need to be willing to be honest with themselves. Are they currently abusing or using any mind mood altering substances?
All right.
I do not think that it is possible, nor do I think it is a good idea to attempt a medication free journey if you are still using substances.
All right.
So, one of the first things I did before becoming completely medication free was overcoming some of these addictions and things that I had and removing these substances from my life. The reason being, you need to have a very, very clear mind and a very stable mind when going about this process. And you need to be able to be hyper aware of micro deviations as they occur, not just day to day, but moment to moment. And it's a process of as you're slowly reducing medications, each reduction that you make, each time you lower the dosage of a medication, right, with your doctor, under the care of your doctor,
Right.
or each time you remove one more medication, you have to readjust to that new like neurochemical landscape, right?
All
You're
right.
going to feel different. And also there's a lot of other, we'll say, behavioral things that need to begin to change, and this just takes time. So you have to learn new coping skills. You have to learn how to be able to sit in your discomfort. You have to be able to learn to recognize your behaviors, your reactions, your responses, and then also make all of the additional lifestyle changes. When I by that I mean like nutrition, fitness, light therapy, sleep, and so it's really a kind of a multifaceted
Holistic
approach,
thing.
and that's why it takes, or at least it took me, a year and a half to do this. My hopes in writing my book and in teaching others, my hope is that it might not take others as long as it did for me, or certainly won't take them decades to get to the point where they can start that journey. Uh, because I didn't have anyone to guide me. Yes, my psychiatrist was assisting in the safe reduction of medication and was a good sounding board for me, but otherwise I was on my own as far as all this lifestyle and all these things that I was doing. I was on my own, and I know how hard that was, but I'm so glad that I did it, and I truly want to help others be able to do the same.
Mm.
But it's really important that they take it seriously. A lot of patients, especially those with bipolar disorder and various forms of psychosis, any of the psychotic disorders, they're
Right.
very they're known to go off of medications, and that's a
Right.
bad
Right.
idea. Prior to
Uh-huh.
my medication reduction elimination journey, I took all of my medications as prescribed for many, many years. I didn't just go on and off of them as I wished. I didn't do anything by myself unilaterally. I was under the direction and care of my doctor the entire time. That's so important. And it's really something that if somebody wants to do this, I do believe it's possible because I'm living proof of it, and I'm not any more special than the next person, but it has to be done with care, taken very seriously, and it has to be something you want very badly to be able to do the work, take it seriously, and and then stay committed to the path because it's a daily effort from then on out.
I am actually quite speechless because this consistent amount of change that you've had to do, that even for someone who's completely mentally stable might find it difficult to do. Um, and oh, just a second. One second. Hi. Yeah, sorry. Um, okay, so the first part is you stopping substance, which in itself is a very big deal, right? Let's talk about that. And what do you count as stopping substance? Like, do you mean completely altogether, or are they like if is having a drink once in a while comes to? But I'm sure that's pretty hard. I don't think anyone that usually has mental illness can really stop with a drink. I mean, particularly, it's quite difficult. But if it's possible, then why not? But could you talk about that part first?
Sure. I know it's not something people like to hear. It's not a popular opinion, but it's okay. I'm not concerned with what's popular. I'm concerned with helping people
Yeah.
have a wonderful life. And so I do not believe that if someone has any amount of mental health disorder or mental illness, that they should partake in mind and mood altering substance. With the
Okay.
exception of maybe some caffeine, I believe in full abstinence when it comes to alcohol, marijuana, tobacco,
Mhm.
illegal substances,
Mhm.
all of I believe complete abstinence is the absolute only way to
Okay.
have a balanced,
Mhm.
healthy life. And I really get upset, to be honest, about how many people out there promote the use of substance
Right.
for treatment of mental illness. And
Right.
I think that that is terrible, a terrible idea. Granted, I'm not a doctor, but I think any use of these types of substances in the name of treatment is just excuse for drug use and addiction.
Mm.
And it's, I believe, preying upon the very people that will struggle the most with addiction challenges. And so I get very upset about that.
Of course. This is the thing is it's so intertwined. And I personally know people that have a lot of mental illness. They drink because they have to, they smoke up and they drink because they have the mental illness. And then they have even worse symptoms because they're drinking and have it's incredibly intertwined. And obviously this whole process is easier said than done. Especially maybe if you're relatively younger. Maybe this is one step, especially if you're in a social circle and everyone's probably picking up a drink. It's a bigger challenge to maybe say no to something like that. And okay, this is maybe even more. Let's say I do care about my mental health. I'm perhaps not completely ready to drop everything um, right now, but I'm okay to take like little steps. Let's say maybe I haven't completely stopped substance. If there's something else, I can start off and maybe eventually consider substance when I'm ready. What would you suggest I do?
Yes. So in in my book, actually, it's kind of broken down into three parts. The
Mm-hmm.
first part being how to prepare for a medication reduction and elimination journey.
Mm-hmm.
Part two
Mm-hmm.
looks at how to actually go about the medication reduction and elimination process.
Mm-hmm.
And the part three goes into how to maintain that new lifestyle with reduced levels of medication or no medication.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because this is a process. So when I say I do not think that people with mental health disorders or mental illness should abuse any substances and that they need to be substance abuse free in order to become fully medication free, I say that with a lot of compassion and
Mm-hmm.
empathy and understanding of how hard it is to
Mm-hmm.
do that. And so it took me many, many years. I started struggling with substances at the age of 14,
Mm-hmm.
and was first given alcohol at the age of 12.
Okay, great.
So it's something that it's not, it was not an easy process for me to become substance abuse free. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm fully aware of how many other people are in that same boat. So I don't want it to come across as judgmental or, holier than thou of saying this kind of substance free, like everyone needs to do it. And if they don't, then they're not good enough. Not like
Mm-hmm.
that. There's a lot that can happen while they're working on making these changes. So
Right.
that's kind of what's covered in part one of my book. And that's
Mm-hmm.
looking at all of these other lifestyle changes, and making the other lifestyle changes will help with the substance reduction, right? Substance use reduction. So a big part of that journey for me was incorporating meditation. So
Ah.
I kind of had a habit of, because my workload was so stressful and I was working 60, 70 hours a week. When I came home, the first thing I wanted to do was to use some substance to try to bring the anxiety down so that I could be into the right mindset to be able to do anything else I needed to do. So I would crack open that bottle of wine just to be able to get through cooking dinner, right? To like try to put myself in a vibe and relax.
Hmm.
And so I realized to break that habit, I needed to totally change up my regimen.
Right.
And so my family, thankfully, bless their hearts, they were willing to be patient with me and supportive of me. So then when I came home from work, instead of going right to the garage or right to the bottle of wine, I would go right to my bedroom and I
Hmm.
would put on a guided meditation or binaural beats or like a shamanic drumming or something that I could then take myself and I would meditate for about an hour. I also meditated every day on my lunch break at work. I put up a sign on my door and I would shut my office door and I would go underneath my desk. So during the period of trying to become substance abuse free, I meditated combined upwards of 3 hours a day. And I know that sounds so crazy to some people, but that's what was necessary for me to work on rewiring my brain and beginning to really change the makeup of my brain and my neurochemistry to help
Hmm.
support
Hmm.
removing substances and support that medication-free journey.
Brilliant. So, um, if you're okay with sharing, because um, what came up during meditation? I'm sure initially it wasn't easy, and also, I know you did or still struggle with a bipolar one, schizophrenia, and I'm sure maybe all of that can make meditation slightly harder, at least initially. So, could you share your journey around that?
Yes. So I, starting from a young age, I had worked with therapists and I had been hypnotized many times before.
Oh,
So my brain did have some level of conditioning when it came to being able to go into a hypnotic state or a trance
okay.
state,
Okay.
just because I had started when I was age 14
Mhm.
to process and deal with some childhood abuse trauma. I
Right.
had seen a therapist who specialized in EMD, something called EMDR,
Mhm.
and that's a type of hypnosis that is great for helping with trauma. And so I had done that, and I'd been put under hypnosis other times to for therapeutic purposes. So
Mhm.
when I started my meditation journey, oh, and I should also add that I was raised in a religious household. I grew
Okay.
up praying, having prayer be an active part of my life.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think those things helped to some degree when I kind of started my official meditation journey because my
Mhm.
mind, the same parts of your brain that are activated during prayer are also the same parts of the brain activated during
Mhm.
meditation and
Mhm.
hypnosis. So I think my brain had some conditioning, but with that being said, most people in society today have very short attention spans,
Right.
that monkey brain, and it's just talking, 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 talking. It
Yeah.
can be hard. So I started out using free guided meditations, short, like 2 to 5 minutes. And I would do those daily, multiple times a day, to begin conditioning my mind and practicing the art of meditation. And it was hard. I would start 2 minutes. I would make it 60 seconds into a meditation, and I'm thinking about, oh, I got to go grocery shopping. Oh, the house is a mess. Oh, I need to do this weekend. The kids need this. So it took time, and I just built up from there. So I had to use guided meditations to start, something that would help keep focus on my breath, keep bringing me back to my meditation and calming the mind. And in time, as I did that daily, it progressed to the point to where I could do hour-long meditations just with some sort of drumming beat or binaural beat that then I could take myself into a deep state of meditation and stay there. And then I also started using free guided sleep hypnosis sessions, which was
Okay.
also helpful.
Right.
So a couple people that I love online for this is a great tool for anyone out there is uh, is Michael Seeley and
Mm-hmm.
Jason Stevenson, I think is his name. So those are the two their YouTube channels. They're huge. They have so many free guided meditations on there, or they're guided hypnosis sessions, sleep hypnosis. And so you can kind of pick the theme and you put on the headphones as you go to sleep, and it will put you into a state of hypnosis and put you to sleep.
Wow.
And it's brilliant. I love it. So that's kind of how I got started.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was able to kind of build that meditation muscle over time. And in answering your question about what things came up, a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So now my meditations are, I don't meditate anywhere near as much as like what I used to.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
during that time. I don't
Uh-huh.
meditate 3 hours a day anymore. I don't even necessarily traditionally meditate daily.
Okay.
I so what things came up, and especially in the beginning, a lot of trauma release
Mm,
and also a lot of self-awareness of things that were difficult or painful to become aware of, but were
okay.
necessary for my being able to go about the journey that I was on, right? We can't put blame on everyone and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
When you have mental illness and you've lived your, especially the types of illnesses that I have, right? I can't speak for everyone, but at least for myself, and I think this is a pretty common occurrence, you do some damage over the years as
Okay.
you are seeking a proper diagnosis and proper treatment.
Mm-hmm.
By damage, I mean you hurt people, you
Mm-hmm.
make mistakes or bad choices, and you cannot blame your mental illness for that.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, it
Okay.
is a part of
Right.
that,
Mm-hmm.
but just as someone with chronic physical illness can't just go around being hateful and mean and angry all the time because they're in pain and then say, oh, it's okay because I have
I'm
chronic
sick.
illness.
Right.
It doesn't make the behavior okay. It makes it understandable,
Uh-huh.
but it, you still have to take personal accountability for your actions. And so, as I began to embark in this meditation, I began to realize my role in so many moments in my life that were
Mm-hmm.
moments that had caused me pain, had derailed my path, been difficult. I had to face my participation and my role in those circumstances. And sometimes I was more to blame than the people or the things that I had previously wanted to blame for them,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. And
Absolutely.
so I ended a lot of meditations in tears,
Oh God.
in kind of having that aha moment of, oh, that mirrored reflection.
Right.
That's me. That was my fault. I did that. Or because I was unwell, I made this choice and it led to that. And so it required me to take a lot of personal accountability and responsibility for things that had happened, where I was at. And that was necessary to be able to move on and move forward. And it was painful. It was very painful.
I I'm sorry. I'm so impressed by you. Wow. Okay. So obviously when you're taking accountability, it can be hard, right? Because you have to accept that your fault, and we humans particularly aren't very great at accepting faults because who wants to be wrong? Um,
No,
so,
yeah.
right. So, how did you deal with any guilt and shame that you had? Maybe if you have any tips, like with compassion, maybe that's a great way to start. I know, but it's easier said than done. And how did you navigate, that stage where like you were taking accountability, but also like sort of letting the past be in the past? If that makes sense.
Yes. It it's an interesting process, and that's a great question, by the way. It's an interesting process because it's a bit of a dance. On
Right.
one hand, you have to see things for what they are,
Mm-hmm.
but also not see them for worse than what they are. And you really do have to take a bit of a objective and kind of neutral perspective.
Mhm.
So, for example, like if you came to me and you said, Rachel, oh boy, 10 years ago I made this mistake, I did this thing, and I just feel so terrible about it, and I wish it wouldn't have happened. I'm not going to sit there and harshly judge you and just think you're the worst person ever and
Mhm.
and then go on and on and on and then continue to bring it up to you every time I see you. Oh, remember you told me you did that thing 10 years ago. You're
Mhm.
so horrible. Like I'm not
Mhm.
going to do that.
Mhm.
You might do that to yourself, but I wouldn't do that. So important to kind of look at ourselves the way we would look at someone else that we love, a
Mhm.
sister, a brother, a friend, right? And give ourselves that same grace and compassion. So I could listen to you talk about a mistake you made 10 years ago, and I might think, ooh, that was not the best decision, or that wasn't a great choice. But that's
Mhm.
also not who you are today, especially if that's not who I know you to be. I'm
Yeah.
not going to judge you off of something 10 years ago,
Mhm.
but I might still make a judgment because I'm human about
Mhm.
what it was you did.
Mhm.
Was that good? Was that wrong? Um, what does that say about where you were at that time or who you were at that time?
Mhm.
But if that's not my understanding of you now, it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
because you are who you are now and you're moving forward and you don't do that thing anymore. So
Mhm.
we have to look at ourselves the same way with curiosity, not criticism. And we
Mhm.
need to evaluate, okay, that's who I was then. I truly was trying to do the best I could do at that time. Or maybe I knew a little bit what I was doing, but I also was very unwell.
Right.
And if there are other people involved and you hurt other people in that process, then like they do in the 12-step program, make amends where amends are due. I think that that's an important part of the process. And you have to be willing to accept just because you're now a changed person and you see the world differently doesn't mean everyone else has to jump
Yeah.
on board.
Right.
And more realistically, especially at the start, people are not going to be on board with the new you
Right.
and they are not going to believe the new you if all
Mhm.
they've ever known is years or decades of chaos and instability and you hurting them and you not being a great part of the family or a great friend or a great spouse. You can't just expect them to suddenly appreciate and respect and acknowledge the new you. So you have to be willing to sit in that stink for a while and give people also the grace and respect and the time to see your actions, to see the new you, and forgive you on their own timeline. So there were many people I had to go and apologize to. Some
Mhm.
people did not accept my apology, and that's okay. Some people did, but tentatively, and it took time. And I had to show up again and again and again in a new way to give them the belief that I had changed. And so it's an important process of loving yourself, forgiving yourself, accepting you cannot go back and change what was, but then making who you are now and what you do now your utmost focus and not caring if other people believe it, respect it, appreciate it, support it. Some of my family was not supportive of me going medication free at first. They were very scared.
Mhm.
All they had known was crazy Rachel for years.
I know.
So then
Mhm.
they saw medicated Rachel while I was muted and more in a zombie state. I was still stable. I wasn't doing crazy stuff anymore. I wasn't hurting them all the time or hurting myself. And so they were very anxious and tentative about like the idea of me going out of that state. They
Medication.
were
Mhm.
afraid I was going to go back to crazy. And I don't blame them for that. And I had to share with them what I was doing on my reduction and elimination journey and give them the space to feel however they were going to feel. I didn't need to convince them. I didn't need to do anything other than just love them, give them that space, love myself, understand where I was. I'm not that person anymore, and move forward every day the best that I could. And know that in time, if it was going to be a good path, then they would come on board. And those who were meant to be with me could hopefully forgive me or appreciate the new me. And then it would be what it was going to be. And that was really the mindset I had to take. And now I have so many wonderful relationships that I'm so grateful for, and my family. and my support team are mean everything to me. And my family now loves, they would none of them would say I should go back on medication unless I wanted to go back on medication or I was not doing well. But thankfully, my siblings, my mother, my husband, my children, all are in support of the way that I live and who I am and love me and help me.
I What you did and what you are doing takes so much of courage. I'm being very frank with you um because what I'm hearing is you need self-awareness, right? And let's say you have that. You need compassion for yourself, you need compassion for other people, you need this is really high level of emotional intelligence that you need to reach to, which I'm sure a lot of people are not at, which can make this whole process a little harder. Um, Especially, I know a lot of people with these disorders might even have NPD and those sort of things, which makes this even more complex to be in this sort of a state. So, wow, I'm astounded. But um, I'm very curious because, see, I know your family called you crazy, and I'm sorry, that's sad. But uh, if you don't mind sharing, like I personally don't completely agree with everything that the DSM describes people clinically, okay? And I would love to hear from your perspective as someone who's actually had the experience of what it really felt like. Because people have this very screwed up idea of mental illness and what it is, and they look at these symptoms and I'm like, yeah, this is a crazy person, but it's obviously not easy for the person that's going through it. And I would love if you could share how it was for you back then and now.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. So let's see. I'll kind of break it up into chunks a little bit. I'll first talk about my life before, I'll say prior to the age of like 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
I was first diagnosed with depression at age 14, but I do not believe that depression and anxiety, that was an accurate diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were going through a divorce at the time. My mother just took me to the family doctor. So he
Mm-hmm.
was qualified enough to prescribe medication or identify I was dealing with some mental health symptoms, but not
Mm-hmm.
qualified enough to make a proper diagnosis. So
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, like many people with bipolar disorder or like schizoaffective disorder and things, they are
Mm-hmm.
often misdiagnosed with depression first. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, those medications, taking an antidepressant is the worst
Mm-hmm.
thing you can do because
Right.
it can spark manic episodes.
Oh
And
no. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so it's very common that how you get a bipolar diagnosis is maybe you've not been on your antidepressants because you went off of them because they weren't really working well enough and you didn't like them and you go back on them and it spins you into a manic cycle. This is very common. And then you go back to the doctor and they say, "Oh, you don't have depression. You have bipolar
Bipolar.
disorder." Or
Uh,
yeah, so that's
Schizophrenic.
very common. So what that's exactly what had happened is I had been I had I think we can go back and see signs of my mental illness from a very, very young age.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I even started going through puberty, the which I went through puberty young at 10 years old, it
Mm-hmm.
was the mood disorder really started to come in. I was very depressed, and of course, I had dealt with some childhood trauma, which so I was dealing with some PTSD as well, and
Sorry.
it is hard. There's mental illness is often a combination of genetic predisposition
Right.
combined with environmental
Trauma.
factors and trauma can often be a trigger, not for everyone, but definitely in my case, it
Mm-hmm.
has been a trigger for the onset of evolution of my mental illness, so to say. So I got treated as a 14 for depression, and I kind of went on and off of my depression and anxiety medications from the age of 14 to 17.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went into the military. I joined the army at 17 years old.
Wow.
And yeah, I was not on medication, obviously, while I was in the military. And when I deployed to the Middle East, to Kuwait and Iraq, and prior to that time, I had begun to have a very serious mental health breakdown.
Okay.
And so ultimately, I left the military. I did like 3 out of my 4-year contract in
Mhm,
the army.
mhm.
And so then I came home, and it's very common with bipolar disorder, these things that you do not have a full manifestation of the illness till somewhere between 18 to 21 years old.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, it's very, very common.
Okay.
And so it kind of was like the perfect storm of trauma
Oh
and
no.
already, a genetic predisposition mixed
Uh-huh.
with multiple incidents of trauma even before the age of 18,
Okay.
then going into the military and trauma of deployment to war and additional incidents of trauma in the military, and then coming out of the military and having substance use issues throughout this period. And it's not a shocker that come 19, 20 years old, I started to have some very serious issues.
Oh.
And
Oh.
by about age 24, I just had so much volatility. I mean, my life was a roller coaster. It was just sheer
Mhm.
madness. The instability of I was just changing homes, moving states. I went to like 7 different universities to get a 4-year
Oh my God.
degree. It,
Oh my God. Oh, that
I
is
I
so.
had by the time I graduated, I had so many credits. It's ridiculous. I had
Yeah.
so many extra credits that didn't even count towards my degree because each school I transferred to had new requirements. And so, anyways, it's just anyone, particularly who has lived with undiagnosed or untreated bipolar disorder, can understand
Mhm.
it is a roller coaster. So, my
Mhm.
relationships, my jobs, my school, my home location, everything was just all over the place. And flash forward of 2009, was when I had the worst breakdown at that point that I'd had thus far in my mental health status. And I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time. Ultimately, I came home back to Las Vegas, Nevada to live with my mother and
Mhm.
to pursue psychiatric care treatment and try to just get my life together. I had a young child. I was a single mom, and out in Texas where I had no family, no friends, no support network. I was just going to school and working, and it was just too much. So in 2009 is when I came back to Las Vegas and I got my official bipolar disorder diagnosis, type 1. And that's when I began the more serious medications, the antipsychotics, the mood stabilizers. And so that was so necessary at that time. I cannot express to you enough. There was no amount of meditation or yoga or breath work that could have taken me down from the manic state that I was in. I needed serious medications, just
Mhm.
as they were prescribed to me in heavy doses to
Mhm.
stabilize. Now, I'm thankfully didn't have to stay on that forever. And as we've already kind of talked about my progression or journey from there, but this was in 2009 and I began that treatment, but I was completely unemployable for a good 6 months. When you start those medications, it wipes you out. I would
Mhm.
be asleep till 2 in the afternoon because I could not get off the couch. I was so sedated. It was
Okay.
extremely difficult. So I had to inch my way, thankfully, to my mother, who supported me in this process. It took time to get back into a normal life, a normal routine. I started going back to work. I started going back to school. And so then, flash forward, it wasn't until, let's see, I was treated for type 1 bipolar disorder just up until 20, it was during the process of writing my book. So
Okay.
2022.
Okay.
Okay. Um,
Okay.
and so to kind of answer your question in like experiencing what it's like with my mental illness and
Mhm.
what people don't understand, prior to that point, I think many people, like once I got medicated, people who knew me at that time wouldn't have necessarily known that I had mental illness. By the time I got stabilized and I was climbing the corporate ladder and
Mhm.
I I mean, I had my own place with me and my daughter. I paid all my own bills. I was fully independent, self-sufficient, stable. And I think people wouldn't have known. So I kept it a secret. I didn't talk about my mental illness because I judged myself for that prior Rachel, the crazy Rachel, and I didn't want to be identified as that. And so I
Right.
was really trying to build this new identity, this new life, and I think most people wouldn't have known. And so I kept it a secret. And that's when I, was going through that corporate life and I realized how many people were unwell and I hated that I would have ups and downs in my mental health, but I couldn't talk about it at work because of stigma and being judged. So I kept a lot of things quiet.
Mhm.
I didn't talk about my mental illness. And it wasn't until I decided to pursue my business and really become an advocate. And then when I wrote my book, I've never actually shared this ever publicly, so you're about to hear something for the first time.
Oh.
When I wrote my book, I talk a lot in my book about being completely 100% open and honest with your doctor, with your support team members. And I realized that I had a moment. It was like a very personal moment where I was writing and I was editing my book and I was reading over that line of you have to be totally honest and open. And I had read that same kind of statement a
Mhm.
plethora of times throughout the book, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm a fraud.
Oh
I'm a fraud.
no.
This is what I thought because I realized
I'm
I
sorry.
had been always 100% open and honest with my doctor, with my
Right.
family, with the exception of a few special symptoms.
Right.
And those are what are related to my schizoaffective disorder. That is
Oh.
the more schizophrenic symptoms. And now that was a slow onset, which is also what made it difficult and confusing. And when you're also a spiritual or religious person, it can be
Mm.
tricky
Right.
because you're experiencing things that a lot of people wouldn't identify as mental illness. They would see it as spiritual phenomena or a spiritual experience.
Absolutely.
And so it made it confusing for me. And then I think when you have ADHD and my doctor said it's common for those of us that are kind of on the psychotic spectrum in the capacity that I
Gravitate.
am, like a high functioning psychotic, so to say, that it can be tricky sometimes even for them to give a proper diagnosis because you can be very stable and high functioning in some areas and high masking
Mhm.
and it can get confusing. And so I was experiencing things that I wasn't even sure. And I've always been a very intuitive person, attention to detail, very observant. And
Mhm.
so I could experience things and then things would come true, right? Like maybe I would hear voices, I would have
Right.
these thoughts or things would happen in dreams and then it would come true.
Oh.
So I didn't know what to
Mm.
think, and it's common with people who are on the psychotic spectrum for them to think that they're psychic or to have these, there's a lot of intermingling of spirituality, spiritual phenomena, mental illness, and it can get confusing. So I had enough experiences when writing my book at that point that I had to accept I think there's something more going on here.
Mhm.
And here it is. I'm telling my audience, I'm telling everyone again and again and again in this book, be honest. And I'm not being honest because I'm scared. I don't want a diagnosis of schizophrenia or any type of, you know,
Mhm.
something more severe. That's
Mhm.
most people are not accepting of this diagnosis.
Right.
And I was afraid what my family, my husband, I was afraid what they would think of me if they knew I heard voices or some of these other symptoms I had stayed silent about.
Mhm.
But then I realized I've got to be open. I've got to tell the truth. And so I started talking to my doctor and telling him what was going on. And I, for the first time ever, was fully open with my family about the extent of symptoms I was having. And I'm so glad that I did do that. It was really scary, but once I did, I was able to then have clarification once and for all that yes, sometimes I have experiences that are legitimate
Mhm.
spiritual experiences. or
Right.
legitimate,
Right.
just heightened intuition or
Mm,
attention to detail. And then I
right.
have these other experiences that are just delusional. And
Right.
so I started the process of accepting that. And honestly, it's why I kind of, after I published my book, like I had just written and published a book, and I kind of went ghost about it. And I just focused on fitness and I really kind of stepped away from the mental health for a while because I was processing, accepting a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder. And I had gone and seen a clinical psychologist and had a full psychological eval. And that's when it was also unearthed that I had not only had ADHD, but I had like raging ADHD. There's so much of that in
Oh,
my family that I
oh,
had never, prior to that point, I had never been diagnosed with ADHD. And so I did experiment to see what ADHD medication felt like for about 6 months after that diagnosis so
mhm.
that I could have a frame of reference. But the process of accepting a diagnosis of schizoaffective disorder was very hard. And it did put me into a bit of a depression for a while because I
Mhm.
had to realize so many things that I thought were real
Oh,
had
no.
not been.
Oh,
And that's
no.
very destabilizing
Right.
when you begin to question everything in your
Mm,
reality. So I guess the next thing I want to say about that is because in the prior years, as I talked about, bipolar disorder, the mood disorders, which are so well stabilized for me now, that was just madness. That's like living on a roller coaster. If you're not diagnosed or you're not being properly treated, you're not well, life is just pure insanity.
mhm.
Schizoaffective disorder, that is
Mm,
something that is without being on medication, I can
right.
understand why people would want to be on medication.
Of
Okay?
course.
When
Mm,
when you have any type of disorder along the psychotic spectrum and you are dealing with any type of schizophrenic symptoms,
mhm.
it's very destabilizing. It's very difficult to deal with. I can completely understand why someone would not want to do what I do. So I want to put that out there.
Mhm.
With the onset of the schizoaffective disorder, what makes it challenging is someone can be stable and unstable at the same time.
Okay.
And I think this is something that would be very hard for a lot of people to comprehend
Right.
because they think if you're crazy, you must be crazy. You
Mm,
could be talking to someone with schizoaffective disorder in particular, right?
mhm.
You could be talking to them. They could actually be very unwell as far as being very psychotic at that time
Yeah.
and you not know it
Oh, okay.
because it's compartmentalized, right? And so how I describe it to people is let's say you and I are sitting on the couch. Or right now,
Mhm.
actually, right? We're having this conversation. Now, let's
Mhm.
say I had a TV over here to my right, and the TV was on,
Mhm.
and let's say that there was a horror film playing on the TV, and it's
Okay.
playing really, really, really loudly.
Okay.
But you and I are trying to have an important conversation here.
Right.
I can be totally present in our conversation. I understand what you're saying. I'm
Mhm.
processing it. I'm speaking clearly and articulately to you, but I can still hear this TV over here, and it might be really,
Oh.
really loud.
Oh my God.
Now, let's say I
Mhm.
wasn't aware it was a TV that had a horror movie playing, but I can hear all the sounds. My mind, so you and I are having a totally rational, grounded conversation. Over here, I hear this horror movie playing. I
Right.
could listen to those sounds, the screams, the banging, and while we're talking, simultaneously be concocting this whole story in my head about how my neighbor is being attacked. And
Oh my
you know what? I saw
goodness.
that car there yesterday, and that guy looked super sketchy. And then all of a sudden, I'm telling you, hold on, we got to pause this conversation. And I go and I'm grabbing a bat or something, and I'm running next door to go protect my neighbor, and I break down her door, only to realize she's not being attacked. She's just fine. She's sitting and watching TV herself. And then I come back to the room and I realize, oh, it's just a movie.
Oh.
So, this is, for me at least, how I
Mhm.
experience all of the delusions that can occur all the time, right? You can hear voices, you can hear. that movie playing. And what I've had to do with being medication free, because if I took antipsychotics,
Mm-hmm.
it would really mute the sound of the TV or
Mm-hmm.
make it not, it would make it turn off altogether. But since I don't take those medications, I have to get used to hearing the TV on in the background and accepting I know the TV's on. There's a horror movie playing. It's just a movie. I can stay present with
Oh,
you. I don't have to listen. I don't have to even pay attention to it if I don't want to. And I certainly don't need to take action like go grab a bat and run next door to my neighbor because my neighbor's just fine. I don't have any proof or anything in the 3D world tangible to indicate to me my neighbor is in danger just because I hear these sounds. So I need to stay present with you, focus on the conversation, and just try to accept that there's the TV on way too loud playing a movie I don't like the sounds of. And
this is a
that
whole
is the
lot of.
best way I can describe for someone who doesn't live with schizoaffective disorder to understand what it's like to deal with the constant noise of voices or paranoid delusions and things like this.
Your brain's working overtime. That is so hard. I don't know how you're doing this. That
It
is a
is
lot
hard.
of.
That's why I said I am not even going to sugarcoat it. This is not for everyone, but it is possible because I do it and it is hard, but it's worth it to me. And most things that are worth value in this life are hard, require hard work. So for me to not deal with the medication side effects, to be able to have a long life and
Mhm.
not deal with long-term medication risks, the ability to have been able to have had children and all of that, it's worth it to me to do what I do to manage my illnesses. But again, I can completely understand why someone would say, just give me the antipsychotic, shut the
Yeah.
TV off. I don't have time or energy for all of that. It takes a lot of self-awareness, it takes a lot of dedication, and sometimes it is hard. And so that's why in my third part of my book, when I talk about maintaining this medication free life or medication reduction plan, you have to make it a full time job. So I arranged the rest of my life in a way to support, to the best of my ability, to support my choice to be medication free. So I would not pursue certain career paths. I would not do certain things. I say no to people or to things. I protect
Mhm.
my peace at all costs. I walk away from things or commitments as needed to maintain my peace because when stress gets too high, the
Oh, that's
psychosis rips up.
stop.
So I work very hard to keep my stress management under control, all of my lifestyle factors in check, and when doing so, it makes it manageable. But very quickly, it can become unmanageable. Very quickly. So that's where it becomes, it has to be something you want, like anything. I mean, somebody could lose all this weight, and then if they don't want to maintain a healthy lifestyle of
Right.
being
You go
active,
back to
eating
something.
healthy, they're going to pack all the fat back on. It's like, okay, well, what do you want? If you don't care about being fit and you'd rather just enjoy good food and whatever, then do you. But if you want to be healthy and fit, then you got to eat healthy, you got to stay active, or else the fat's just going to come right back. And that's my life.
This is. Oh, you're so inspiring. Wait, so tell me one thing. So do you feel like in that situation, in that moment, at least before, I mean, now I know you're very aware and that's crazy. That's very difficult, but did you at that point also feel like I'm hearing the voices, or did you feel like it's only something you could hear?
No, I've when any of the time, like when I how I experience the voices that I hear,
Mm-hmm.
it's not usually when other people are around.
Okay.
So it's oftentimes, let's say like late at night when everyone's gone to bed, or
Mm-hmm.
it could be during the daytime, it doesn't matter, but it's more when I'm just sitting quiet or still by myself, then I can hear the voices. But it's I've never thought other people or any of the well, actually, I should rewind. That's what kind of one of the things that started to help key me on to that there was something more going on. I have a
Okay.
lot of uh, called olfactory hallucinations as well. So
Hmm.
I would smell popcorn all the time. And I would
Okay.
always ask people like, does it smell like popcorn to you? I don't know
Okay.
why. That's my most common um, hallucination is I smell popcorn. As far as for the smells, I smell popcorn. It's really
Oh,
strange. So I started realizing that nobody else could smell popcorn. Or there would be sometimes I would hear sounds or I'd hear my name called and things that no one else, they didn't hear anything. And I get a lot of sensations like feels almost like bugs on my face.
okay.
Get little pinpricks on. I get that one a lot. It's like I'll feel like there's like hair or something on my face, and so I knew those things. And then I would have the voices, but the way that I experienced those, I knew that nobody else could hear them because it's a conversation with me.
Okay.
Like the
I
voices are having a conversation with me,
mhm.
so I knew that they weren't talking to anyone else.
I see. That's God. I'm glad this is like a space where you spoke about that because how did you differentiate that from like a spiritual experience? Because I think I can sometimes if when I put myself in that position, I might also potentially see that as something else going on or oh, am I, like I said, like you said, am I psychic? Am I feeling something other people are not feeling? Is my intuition kicking in? What else is going on? Is it something spiritual? So that must have been difficult to like really understand what's going on.
Yes, I think particularly for me,
Mhm.
in that everyone with schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder experiences their experience is going to be different, right? And how what kinds of hallucinations or delusions they have. Everyone's very different. There are some
Mhm.
commonalities, but everyone's different. And for me, I would say it's a blessing. I guess I'm grateful for it. For the most part, any voices that I hear, they're benevolent.
Okay.
And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. So a lot of people, the voices will say really horrible, mean things to them. And
Oh
like,
no.
you know, actually, Michelle Hammer talks about that. A lot of times her voices are arguing with her or
Mhm.
being mean to her or
Yeah.
but what made it very challenging for me for a long time to differentiate that what I was experiencing was delusional or hallucination is that when I heard voices, it's like how a grandma would talk to you, right? I do have a few different
Okay.
voices that I hear, but they're generally speaking benevolent and would give me guidance or tell me to do things and always more so in a positive way, like a friend. Like I had like
Okay.
a group of friends in my head, right?
Interesting. Interesting.
And they would come at times and be helpful and be supportive. And so it made it easier to feel like it was more of a spiritual experience, let's say ancestral or, you know, these things it made it
Mm-hmm.
easier to experience it that way or rationalize it that way than to
Okay.
accept I'm hearing voices and am hallucinating.
Okay. I see. That's actually there was this research paper. Maybe if at some point I might send it to you and share it, where this person really discusses schizophrenia being a form of spirituality. I don't know. It was something. I mean, doesn't mean necessarily anyone has to agree with it, but it was some crazy level research where it's very intertwined and there's some big research around that. So maybe I'll send that to you for sure. But
Yeah, you
um
should.
yeah, yeah. So. I am at loss of words with you, honestly. Like consistently, everything that you've told me is an incredibly inspiring journey, and I'm so grateful for you being here today. And before I even end this session, I think there's someone in the chat box that actually did send a long question. Is that okay if we can take one more question?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
Um, okay, so should I read it out? One second. Okay. Okay, so hi Rachel, I had a question. I hope you don't mind taking it. So, the question is given a person goes in a mental health turmoil. The process to understand and reprocess it towards stability goes through psychology, neuroscience, our mental space, our reality, perception of self, etc. So, given these spaces, we are in a side of science suggesting that medication with psychology is the golden combo. When we are looking at it from the reality perspective, if the individual state is something complex, like let's say dementia, or on the other side of those which are recoverable to an extent, I understand how you mentioned in your book how to process it and go on to a medication free journey. Is there a theoretical or imaginary line which you can define, which can make the person aware if they can go med free or stay with medication because the situation is already as it is? Lastly, where do we or how can we draw a line, personal or psychological? I think he's calling it like the X and the Y axis.
Like at which point someone can be
I think
medication
that's what
free,
I think that's what
not?
he means. I think that's what he means.
Okay.
Me here, in case that's what we mean, just can you clarify that? And it's okay if you don't want to unmute, then we can send it on the chat box. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I sorry, actually never in a space to,
Yeah, I think that's what he meant.
Okay. Okay. So that's a great question. Thank you so much, one, for being here and watching and participating and engaging with questions. I appreciate you. It it's funny you used the word imaginary line because I think it
Mm-hmm.
is a bit of an imaginary line. And it's something that I truly feel people need to work with a doctor. I value psychiatry, I value doctors, I value medication just as much as I value natural paths and natural solutions and the individual's ability to use internal, like their own internal guru, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a dance between the two. It's a married partnership, and it is a bit of an imaginary line. But I think that's true for most things of value that we want to pursue in this life, right? We see this goal, we see this person we want to be, this life we want to achieve, and it may seem very far away. It may seem even impossible, but it will never become a reality or a possibility unless we choose, we make the conscious choice. This is who I want to be. This
Mm-hmm.
is the life that I want to achieve. And I will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes until I get there. And even if I fail, I'll certainly be farther along than where I was when I started. And when you start with that mindset, then you begin to change and grow. And it is a bit of an imaginary line because only you will truly know at what point you cross over the threshold of who you used to be
Mm-hmm.
and have truly become who it is that you are becoming and the life that you want to have. So, the more change that a person needs to make, the slower that they need to take that transformation journey. You don't have to fix it all overnight. And when you have that kind of long game mindset, it doesn't matter how long it's going to take because you've already decided this is who I will be, this is the life that I will have, no matter how long it takes. So you break it down. It's called reverse engineering. If
Mm-hmm.
this is, and that's what I hope to share with people in the book. If you know, I want to do my best to try to make a medication free life a reality, then what would I need to do to make that a reality? And that's what the things that I teach you in my book. And that's in that part one. You just one thing at a time. And not everyone will need to make all the same transformation or change. You might be further along than the next person, or someone else might be further along than you. But it doesn't matter because it's your journey. So you start out with that honest self evaluation of, am I still drinking alcohol multiple nights a week? Am I how often do I work out? How seriously do I take my food? Am I feeding my brain? Am I feeding my body? What is my sleep like? What is my lifestyle habits? And you just start to change one thing at a time. You don't have to fix it all overnight. So pick one thing at a time and attack that and set really, really manageable goals. If your life is complete chaos and you dream of a medication-free life, well, you're not going to fix it all overnight. So pick one thing. Maybe we're just going to work on reducing alcohol intake, or we're going to work on improving our sleep, saying no to going out with the pals so that you stay in and get a good night's sleep if that's what you need to recover
Yeah.
from the week. You pick one thing. I'm going to work on my sleep for the next couple weeks, and you don't just say, I'm going to have it be perfect. I'm going to work on going to bed 1 hour earlier each night, or I'm not going to stay up all night, right? It's each person's going to be at a different starting point. But it's so important you set a manageable goal that you will actually achieve so you can build that momentum of trust in yourself. It was very important for me when I took that last pill that I trusted that I could do all the things that I needed to do to be able to stay medication free. I knew that I could because I had a year and a half of living the life, walking the walk, talking the talk, doing the thing. But it wasn't perfection overnight. I had a lot of start, try, fail, start, try, fail. And until I got it to where I was successful more than I failed. And then I trusted myself. And then I trusted my reality. And it was one foot in front of the other. And even then, I wasn't perfect. I'm not perfect now. I have lots of things I'm still actively working on to be a better mom, a better wife, a better businesswoman, a better coach, and have better care of my mental health. And it's a dance and it never stops. And so there is a magical line, but I do believe there is a point when you intuitively know I've done a lot of work. I've done enough work. I trust now, alongside my doctor, that if I completely eliminate the last of this medication, that I'll be okay. And if I'm not, if at any point I'm not okay, I'll go back on medication, and that's okay too. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. It's a really interesting take and a great answer, I think.
Rachel,
Wonderful.
I am truly astounded, and I do have, okay, maybe one final question, if you don't mind. So,
Sure.
I want you to give any tips for someone who, sometimes even when you really want something and you're working towards it, you hit that prick in your life where it feels so hard to keep going on. And even if you've done it right and you've made it, it's easy to sort of slip back in sometimes. You may really crave that drink again, or want to pick up that bottle again. Doesn't mean that you're not trying hard. What can someone do at that stage, A? And B, how can people, loved ones, help? Like friends and partners and family, like what can people do to better understand and help out in that situation?
Yes, those are great
Mm.
questions. To answer the first question, I think it's better that you expect failure.
Okay. Okay.
If you expect perfection just because you've made this decision or you're doing all the things, you're doing the most, that's an unrealistic expectation.
Of course.
And so I think when you expect imperfection along a journey towards transformation and self mastery,
Mm-hmm.
then it's okay. It's going to happen. You already knew it was going to happen. So when it happens, you look at it, you again, you approach it from curiosity, not criticism. You try to figure out what happened there. And again, you do some reverse engineering. If it was that you drank, well, what led into that? Okay, what was your mental state the earlier that day from the night that you drank? Well, oh, it had been a really stressful day. It had been a really stressful week. Okay. Well, what made it a really stressful day and a really stressful week? Is there something you can do about that? If you can't, then maybe in the future, when you've had a really stressful week like that, maybe you shouldn't go out with your friends who you know are going to the bar and you know you're going to be in a tempting situation. Maybe it would have been better to invite a friend in and watch a movie,
Right.
order in some food or something, right? And so when we begin to just kind of, when we make these mistakes, when we can stop and ask ourselves some deep dive questions, well, why did that happen? Well, why did I feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what could I do to change feeling that way, or and you take it back, and then you try to do your best to set yourself up for success the next time. And then you might fail again, and that's
Okay.
okay. You're just going to keep trying, and each time you try to problem solve what created that failure or that deviation. What led into that? Well, I wasn't eating well the whole week. I didn't exercise at all. Instead of going out Saturday morning for my long walk and getting some sunshine, I slept until noon. Like, okay, I know that that makes me more depressed. So I need to, no matter what, next Saturday, make sure I get up and go on my long walk. Or, it's you start to do these things and you start to set your own rules. And I talk about that in part 3 of my book. My rules won't be your rules or her rules or someone else's rules. You begin to learn where are your pitfalls. You avoid them. You set yourself up for success,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't judge yourself. Like it's a experiment. It's a process. You're
Right.
learning how to be medication free. You're learning your illness. It's going to take time. The doctors who prescribe you those medications, they didn't learn how to do that in a week.
Right.
They went through years and years of training to understand how to treat pharmaceutically. So it's going to take you years to learn how to treat naturally. And that's
Yeah.
okay. So that's the answer to the first question.
Uh-huh.
Then the second part of your question, what can family members and friends do? This one's a tricky one because we can't control other people.
Right.
So, from the patient's perspective, we can't expect everyone to support us, or
Right. Right. Okay.
um, and
Yeah.
so I think we need to do our best to educate those that we love. If we want someone to be our support team member,
Mm-hmm.
then we need to be willing to educate them. That is not their responsibility to educate themselves on our illness. I,
Mm-hmm.
I have family members with diabetes or other things. I don't spend hours upon hours learning all the ins and outs of their illness and everything. It's that's their life. Like, I can support them and know enough, but if they really need me to understand their illness because they need support from me, then I would hope that they would educate me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's our role to educate others,
Mm-hmm.
and also give people the grace if they don't want to support it, if they don't understand it, if they don't agree with our treatment plan. And so we find a few key people, which I also talk about and teach in my book, of how to build a solid support team and know how to identify who would be a good support team member. And you don't
Okay.
need 20 people. You
Mm-hmm.
really only, if you have even one good support team member, that's all you need. Someone who's aware of your illness and your state at all times,
Mm-hmm.
someone who understands your pitfalls, who understands your warning signs and triggers so they can help identify cycling, microcycling when it occurs. But if you can have more than one, wonderful, you're blessed. I feel very fortunate that I have my husband, my mother, and my eldest daughter that are really like my biggest support team. So those three people and my doctor, of course, they know where I'm at all times,
Mm-hmm.
and I keep them informed. So I think that's for the patient. For the family members who maybe would listen to something like this, and you have a loved one, the best thing that you can do is to, I think, stay grounded. For those of us who live life in and out of states of instability,
Mm-hmm.
having stable people is everything. My
Okay.
husband, I refer to him in the beginning of my book as like my rock, right? And that's because he is a steady as a drum. The kind of person who eats the same thing for breakfast every day, he does the same things
Oh,
every day. He's
damn.
so
Okay.
predictable and reliable in the right ways, and he's grounded, and as my storms may come in and out or flow, he doesn't let it waver him. And he doesn't judge. He doesn't make accusations or call things out. Kind, patient, grounded, and curious, will ask questions. And I think, especially if you are supporting a loved one who deals with schizoaffective disorder or schizophrenia,
Mm-hmm.
the worst thing that you could do is to accuse them, to call out their delusions, to try to shake sense into them. Like, it's
Oh no.
when you're having delusions and hallucinations, they can feel so real. And when you're in a state of psychosis, it can feel so real that trying to challenge someone's delusions is not a good idea. The best thing that you can do is be a constant reminder of reality.
Okay.
Be grounded, be the reality. And I think physical touch is really important. So sometimes um, I get triggered and I'm
Mhm.
starting to spiral with some delusional type thinking.
Mhm.
Maybe my family or people around me don't even know that that's happening.
Mhm.
And I will then go and just maybe like snuggle up with my husband on the couch to feel his body, to feel the weight of it brings a sense of tangible reality. So I think physical affection, being grounded, comforting, loving, not challenging, being patient. I know it's hard, especially if your loved one's saying just crazy things, right? I
Mhm.
know that I can only imagine how hard that would be to like sit there and listen to just
Mhm.
delusional thinking.
Mhm.
But just do your best. I know it's hard, and I'm sorry that you're dealing with that, but how lucky for your loved one that you can do your best to be grounded for them. So take care of yourself too. I would coach anyone who's supporting a loved one with mental illness,
Uh-huh.
especially psychotic spectrum illnesses, to
Mhm.
read my book and all the lifestyle habits and practices that I teach for the patient.
Mhm.
The loved one should do too, because the better mental health you can have, the better you can support a loved one with mental illness.
Thank you. Thank you truly for everything. And um, in my capacity, I will do my level best to promote not just you, but your book.
Thank
Because
you so much.
it seems to, and I will probably, Ashley, I will be buying your book and giving it to maybe a friend or two that I know deal with something very similar. And I'm sure they'd love it. And I'm definitely going to let you know what they think of it as well. So thank you for being here today. Your journey is beyond inspiring, and um, at the risk of putting you on a pedestal, sounds like the ideal way to go. But um, I know not everybody can do that, but I hope anyone who's watching this can take a lot away from this. And I'm still quite speechless because of the amount of things that you've overcome. And I know we've just had this conversation, but I just want to say I'm proud of you. And what you went through wasn't easy. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for all your kind words and for inviting me on here today and giving me an additional platform and space to speak. So I really appreciate you and all those who came and listened today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll be sending you this video after this is like in an hourish. And please remember that this is just a platform, so this belongs to you just as much as it belongs. So you can feel free to do whatever you want with it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you have a lovely day.
You too.
Oh, thank
Bye.
you. Bye.